Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guests today are Andrea Bright, the Assistant Commissioner of the Office of Human Resources Management for Enterprise Services at Customs and Border Protection, and Ron Vitiello, Senior Advisor at CBP. Ron, Andrea, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Well, it's great to have you both here because CBP is obviously about to embark on a major hiring effort. It already has. Uh, just a couple months ago, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act included funding for CBP to, of course, hire about 5,000 customs officers, 3,000 Border Patrol agents in the coming years. And so this is a huge effort, and I'm really excited to get some insights from both of you on what goes into that. Ron, if I can start with you, just given this massive effort coming in the next few years, can you talk a little bit about CBP's strategy and plan right now for meeting those recruiting goals?
Well, we're going to do a lot of the things that we know are successful and using the tools that are available with recruiters, with social media, with all of the advertising that the AC we can talk a little bit more about. But we're going to use all the tools that we know work. And we're just going to inspire people to look into CBP at careers.cbp.gov and encourage them to apply. We're going to be looking for people who are interested in serving their country. There's not been a better time in my 40 years around this business to be in Customs and Border Protection. So we're really looking forward to expanding on our frontline capacity, along with all the other things that the bill brings forward with regard to technology, infrastructure at the border, the infrastructure that these new people will work in, and all the tools that they need to succeed.
Andrew, anything to add there just on the initial kind of recruiting push here?
We are really learning from our lessons learned over the last 5 years, last decade. CBP has really spent a lot of time learning about how to recruit and how to hire efficiently and effectively. And we've also learned to be flexible. So when COVID hit and there weren't any in-person hiring events, we switched to online. So we've learned how to be flexible over the last few years, and we also have become really data-driven in our approach to hiring. We monitor every step in the hiring process, and if we see something starting to go awry, if we see a bottleneck occurring in a place in our hiring process, then we can shift resources there. So we really are moving continuously to improve and enhance our hiring process.
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk about some of the improvements to the hiring process. I wanted to home in on the initial plan for kind of meeting those targets. We know hiring takes time, recruiting takes time. I think there's been Secretary Noem has talked about a big uptick in applications. Do you have a sense of the kind of year-over-year targets that you all are going after at this point in terms of meeting the overarching goals of the bill and the funding there?
So our plan is to spread our hires out over the next 4 years. We are definitely increasing hiring, but really over those 4 years, phasing folks in. And there are a few reasons for that. For us, that ensures that our process stays continuous and that we don't see a spike somewhere that then creates a bottleneck in the process. So we are keeping a continuous flow through our hiring process and through our training academy, just ramping up the volume throughout the entire process. So, but maintaining a continuous flow across that time period. That also enables us, as we bring folks into the field, to have the on-the-job portion of the training continue with folks who are already here. So we aren't bringing in everyone all at once and having to bring all those folks up to speed at once and spiking the number of supervisors all at once. So it enables us to have a more measured approach over time, but we are definitely increasing the volume over the next few years.
And Ron, I know you've been in this space for 4 decades now, and CBP has had hiring pushes in the past where they've had some pretty ambitious goals, and I think those have had both successes and challenges. I'm wondering if you can talk about what CBP has learned from those prior efforts that will apply in the coming years as it formulates its strategy around this most recent push.
Well, I think the timelines here are aggressive, but certainly achievable. And the assistant commissioner was right to say that they've learned a lot in regards to how the data has told us what works, what doesn't work. I think that it's fair to say that the applicants themselves will have more transparency into the hiring steps. I think that makes it easier, like from the user's perspective, when they go online and go through the process, they can see where they are, what needs to happen next. They're not waiting for forms or things to come in the mail or email to them. And so I think that they've optimized the existing, necessary processes, but also put them on parallel tracks instead of having it consecutive, to have them contiguous. When you're doing one thing, you can advance on another part of the hiring step. And so the timeline, although aggressive, is well within the capabilities that CBP has, and the bill provides sufficient resources. I think there's still some hiring to do on the HR side to make this more fluid for the applicants, but it's well within the capabilities and the learning and their use of data to be successful.
As you receive a much larger portion of applications under this big recruiting push, how are you ensuring that candidates are properly vetted and suited for the job as you try to meet these ambitious hiring targets?
Well, there hasn't been a change in what the qualifications are. We want people that have sufficient experience. They will be required to do a medical exam, the initial testing for their where they are on the intelligence scale. The background investigation, polygraph exam, none of those steps will be altered or have changed. They'll be put in the right place during the process to maximize and optimize those steps, but the standards will be the same. We want good people that we can trust to do the job and serve the American people.
And just a quick follow on that, we saw recently that Immigration and Customs Enforcement removed the age limits for ICE recruits to help meet some of these recruiting goals. They're very ambitious recruiting goals. You said the standards don't change. Is CBP considering any changes to standards to help meet these hiring goals?
Well, the assistant commissioner said, we're definitely able to be flexible given the needs that are occurring, but we don't have as big a hole to fill as it relates to the numbers at ICE, and her team, has over the last several years optimized and learned and taken the data and refined the process. So we think we can do it with the existing incentives.
And just given that law enforcement recruiting has generally been difficult over the past 5-10 years, and now you of course have your partners at ICE also dipping into this pool of applicants. I mean, is there any kind of collaboration going on across the different components on this? Is it just a competition for applicants, or how is that working?
Well, I think it's a healthy rivalry. There are natural pipelines within the Department of Homeland Security. CBP gets quite a few applicants from TSA, for an example. We regularly lose people to ICE investigations or an ERO, but we think that we're well positioned to recruit and fill the targets as outlined.
And in terms of learning from those past efforts to improve the hiring process, Andrea, I know that this is something you've really focused on as far as especially using technology. Can you talk a little bit about how your office is trying to make that pipeline as streamlined as possible without obviously skipping any of the necessary steps?
So one of the things that Chief Vitiello was just referencing was our what we call applicant portal. So one of the things that we've done is rather than just getting emails or messages or phone calls from folks at our hiring center, now our applicants can go into an actual online portal. Once they've applied for a job, they go online, they can see their status. So the law enforcement hiring process has some additional steps. So it's not just apply, have your resume reviewed, complete an exam, and get a job offer. We do that, but then there are a bunch of additional steps. So individuals have to complete a medical exam. They have to have drug testing, a polygraph. There are a whole bunch of additional steps in the hiring process for our applicants. And so we've created a portal where they can go in online at any point in time and see exactly where they are in that process. They can see steps that they've passed, steps that are in progress, steps that haven't begun yet. So it gives them a whole lot more transparency. And what we're finding is that applicants are more likely to stay in the process when they have that kind of information. They don't feel like nothing's happening. They can understand that things are actually happening, things are moving, as opposed to that feel of just being in the black box of throwing a resume into something online and not getting any response. So now they have that where they can self-service. They can schedule some of the appointments themselves. We've also moved some of our assessments online so that rather than going to a physical testing location, you can do tests online. And for our applicants, that has been historically a huge barrier because there's cost associated with that. In a lot of cases, you have to travel somewhere for that. So we've identified all those places where there may have been barriers that made the process less streamlined and frankly discourage people from staying in the process. So we keep looking at our process again to identify any place where we can remove friction. And a lot of times that's through automation.
I think that's something that in the security clearance world, folks have been looking at too, is increased transparency and some automation in some of the steps. And it's been a little bit harder there, but it's interesting to hear that CBP has had success with just providing transparency to applicants as they go through this process. Do you have an average sort of target for that whole hiring end-to-end hiring process? Because I know that's ranged anywhere from 300 to 600 days. I think GAO reported within the last 5 years. So do you have a target that you're trying to meet going forward to help meet some of these goals?
So this is another place where we've really dug into the data, and there are a couple of things that we found. So one is that applicants who don't require follow-up in terms of their medical requirements or their suitability requirements, those individuals go through on one path, and that's a pretty fast path. That can be 3 or 4 months, a little bit longer, depending on, a lot of it also is responsiveness of the applicants. So sometimes, they're off on vacation. They don't get back with us. So there are little pieces of that. So there's a little bit of variation, but those are our fast track individuals. And again, because of the way we've automated things, a lot of the timeline is driven by applicants. So they can self-schedule pieces of the process. So if they're available and there's an appointment available for them to do their drug testing, they click and they schedule that. Now, that may mean that sometimes like I said, they're on vacation, they're out of town, whatever it may be. There may not be an appointment available close to them for a couple of weeks. It varies. And so they're controlling that path. So that's the fast path. Then we also have sort of in between paths of folks who have one or the other, either a medical condition that may require some follow-up. And sometimes that means they have to go back to their doctor. That may take a little bit of time for them to get that scheduled, get the information back to our doctors who then review the information. So that's sort of an in-between. And the same thing on the suitability. Sometimes someone has something in their background investigation that requires follow-up. And then the third path, those are the folks who take longest. And those are folks who, the way that I refer to this is they are folks who have a well-lived life. And they may have both of those things that need to follow up. So they may have some medical things. They may also have, something in their background, whether it's something that shows up on our credit report that requires additional explanation, whatever it is. So those are the folks who are taking the longest time. So rather than looking at it holistically, we're looking at it really, again, to look into the data to figure out, are there opportunities for us to streamline the process again? The other thing that we have found in our hiring process is that sometimes, and this happened a few years ago for our Customs and Border Protection officers. We had so many applicants in the pipeline that we had individuals who were ready to onboard, but we were fully staffed at that time. And so they were held basically in a queue, and they were willing to stay in that queue for up to another year, sometimes even longer, until there were classes available and funded positions available. So sometimes that happens where we are so popular that individuals are willing to stay in the process. So we also look at what we call time to process in addition to time to hire, because time to hire includes that waiting period for individuals. We also have people who are coming out of the military. CBP has between 25 and 30% of our workforce are former military members. And sometimes when they're transitioning out, they apply early because they are thinking ahead. And we love that they are thinking ahead and planning their next steps in their career. But that may mean that they need to, again, delay that entry on duty. And that factors into the time to hire. But they may actually be cleared and ready to go, and they are not transitioning out of the military for another 6 months or whatever. So we'll put them into a queue and let them hold until they are ready to join us.
Okay, really interesting in terms of some of the data and steps you're taking there. And one thing I did want to home in on was you mentioned early on the polygraph, I think has been raised as, one of those challenges with hiring at CBP, I think by some members of Congress, by the GAO. Do you foresee any further changes to polygraph policy at CBP, the way that you use the polygraph to vet candidates?
Well, the mandate is a legal mandate, so there's only so much flexibility that we can exercise at CBP as it relates to the polygraph exam. So, this is something that we've wanted for as a hiring process for quite some time. What I do think that if there are going to be changes, it will be along the lines of the changes that HRM has made, which is to optimize, the ability to take tests, the transparency about when your test is, and information online about what the test is and what it isn't. And then, just to be able to streamline and use the data to tell us, what's working as it relates to the user-friendly part of it, like what is the applicant's experience, and improve that to the extent possible, and then be flexible on the operational side, which says lots of tests in lots of places and scheduled as fast as possible.
Are there opportunities to increase capacity for polygraph exams? Because I know that's a challenge that the government has faced writ large.
Yeah, I do think that is a problem that's faced by all government agencies that require a polygraph exam. The testing side and the certification is in one location in the U.S. They have a limit to their bandwidth and capacity. CBP has had this challenge before, so we'll maximize the use of the people that we have, and then there'll be contracts available in that and other parts of the hiring process to make sure we meet the goals.
And one thing we haven't talked about is CBP is also reaching out to recently retired CBP officers and air and marine operations agents and offering them reemployment opportunities. Have you seen any interest there so far? Any updates just on that initial offer?
I'll let the AC give us the numbers, but this is a place of maximum efficiency. Over the previous administration, it was a lot harder to come to work every day, given the conditions that agents face on the Border Patrol side. Similarly, in OFO, before that, there was this challenge with the mandate for vaccinations, et cetera. And so those people who might not have left if conditions were normal or better, have expressed an interest to come back. And so this is efficient for the government and for CBP, and it allows people to finish the way they kind of want to.
So we've had about 300 folks who have applied. It changes day to day as individuals are hearing more about the opportunity. And the other thing I would add is for us, it's bringing back in some of our more senior folks, people who have a lot of experience. And those are the kinds of folks that we're going to need to mentor our our new hires. So it's great to have the opportunity to bring in some of our seasoned folks again who are interested in continuing to contribute to the mission.
Well, and speaking of retirements, I think part of the reason that this bill included so much funding for CBP was you all are planning or anticipating an uptick in retirements over, I think, the next 4 years, especially, I think, starting in 2027, a lot of folks become available are eligible to retire. I think for either of you at a high level or kind of down in the weeds, what are you watching as far as that anticipated retirement bow wave and how you plan for that, how you maybe keep some folks or fill positions quickly enough to make up for that?
So this is another area where we really have been looking at the data. So it's for the last few years, we have been looking forward because we knew this was coming, or we thought it may be coming. And so we really have built out models so that we can forecast when those retirements will occur and what the impact will be on our workforce. We also are monitoring our attrition. Right now, our attrition is low, and that is helpful for us as we move forwards. But we'll see if individuals retire right when they become eligible, or if they're interested in sticking around for a little while and continuing to contribute to the mission. But that is part of our forecasting as we identify the hiring that's required in order to meet these numbers. For us, we focus on sort of two things: the number of people we need to hire, but also the number of people we intend to have on board. So for Border Patrol, for example, we're looking to have 25,000 onboard agents. And so we need to look at our attrition. To your point, we need to make sure that when we're doing our hiring, it's not only hiring for the new plus up, but it's also looking at hiring for attrition. So we factor all of that in as we're looking forward in our forecasts.
And Ron, looking at this from the 30,000-foot level, and as a retired agent yourself, what do you expect to see as far as folks consider sticking around or not sticking around? How are you watching this?
Well, I think we're going to have a number of people who are eager to come back. I think there's going to be people that are eager to stay, even though they may be eligible for retirement. They're going to see, like we've already seen since January 20th, a huge transformation on the border. Right now, the policy and the interagency cooperation has led to the lowest activity levels on the southwest border as it relates to illegal migration than we've ever seen in the history of the country. And so now these agents have more time on task to patrol the border, to seize fentanyl, to rescue people who are in danger or are being trafficked. And so the job is very different today than it was before January 20th. And so I think the people who are, that have the wisdom and have the experience and are now have a job with the tools that allow them to succeed, I think they're going to be more likely to stay around. And that's true for the Air and Marine Group, and it's true for Customs and Border Protection officers as well. Those tools are available now. They get to exercise on the threats. They get to exercise and focus on the things that really keep Americans safe. And so I think the satisfaction level for the job is going to be much higher than it's been in a while.
I wanted to drill into the fact that, obviously we often think CBP, you think Border Patrol, but there's funding for 5,000 customs officers in this bill that we've been talking about. And we're obviously facing an evolving customs and trade environment. And there's a lot of anticipated travel to the United States coming up over the next several years. How are you looking at the customs side of this mission? And are there distinct differences between recruiting for a customs position versus a border patrol position beyond the obvious, geography and where you need to be?
Yeah, the locations are a huge driver for both pipelines, right? We do, I think in the Border Patrol before I left, we were recruiting a lot at the border, but now I think we're stretched out a little bit more across the country. OFO, the Customs and Border Protection officers, since they are in different locations around the country and around the globe, as a matter of fact, they are recruiting and people see what they do in different places all over the country. But I think it's the same. The AC talked about the use of data. Where are these people coming from? what is their aptitude? Which locations are they more eager to go to? And so, yeah, it's configured for what the roles are, but the bottom line is we need people who can qualify and are suitable to do the job, that are looking to serve the country and come back. She mentioned, people transitioning out of the military into service at CBP, and so all of those things that work, where we are and where we're not, we're going to reach out to these people and encourage them to apply. And I think, given the information and the experience that we have so far, we're well within our capabilities to meet the hiring goal.
And Andrea, do you have a laydown at all in terms of priority areas for hiring, priority geographically, at HQ or otherwise?
It is, I will say, continuously evolving. So as in particular, so Border Patrol, if you start there, Border Patrol is primarily on our northern and southern borders. We have historically been hiring for the last, I'd say, 5 years or so, almost exclusively when people come into the Border Patrol, they were assigned to southwest border locations. Now we're seeing some hiring on the northern border as well. It's interesting because people tend to think of the southern border as being particularly isolated, but our locations for Border Patrol on the northern border are also tend to be pretty remote when you think about how vast the northern border is. So there are people who really are interested in those types of jobs, but frankly, who weren't interested in going to the southern border, but maybe interested in going to the northern border. So we're seeing different individuals who may not have considered a job with us before being interested as we expand the locations where we're hiring. For the Customs and Border Protection officers, they really are scattered across the entire country. Wherever there is an international airport, we obviously have a presence. And then along the borders as well, where folks are coming directly across the border at our ports of entry, we'll have Customs and Border Protection officers there as well. So there are a whole lot of opportunities at CBP. And I will say they're very different. So what a Border Patrol agent does on a daily basis is really different from a Customs and Border Protection officer. And so they are of interest to different people. And the other thing is, I come from Ohio. I grew up in Ohio and did not have a whole lot of interaction with CBP. I really wasn't familiar with it. And so one of the things that we've done is we have what we call interior recruiting teams. So we have found out from our data again that individuals who had actually talked to a recruiter in person, who had met one of our recruiters, were a whole lot more likely to stay with us through the whole hiring process than someone who was just applying off the internet and didn't know anyone. And so we now have interior recruiter teams stationed around the country who are out building relationships in the communities. They're out, they're present, they're talking at local high schools, they're at local hiring events, but they're also there where people see them and get to know them and can learn a little bit about the types of careers that CBP has. And we found that that's another effective way of expanding our geographic reach.
Okay, and well, we've talked about how you are using technology to improve the overall HR process. One thing we haven't discussed is how CBP is using technology and how it's, training its workforce to use that technology effectively and properly. I think there's a lot of investments in AI, biometrics writ large across the DHS and certainly at CBP. I'm wondering, how are you kind of training both your current workforce and new employees on technology, on the use of things like AI and biometrics? Are there any updates there? Are there any evolving strategies there?
Well, it's safe to say that especially the workforce that'll come in under this hiring project, the next couple of years, these folks are well suited to use technology. They've grown up with it, literally in their pockets, and so the technology that's used at the ports, in between the ports, is constantly evolving. There's constantly a requirement coming from the field for them to be able to do things faster, more efficiently, more effectively. And so we'll continue on that path to improve and upgrade and recapitalize those systems. And then AI is part of sort of the laydown that each and every agent has at their desktop. I think we're still in the beginning stages of the full potential, but the sensors that the Customs and Border Protection officers use and the sensors that are in between the ports are fully integrated with AI tools, again, to make them more effective, to economize and optimize the agent officer time, so they can focus on individual threats and individual people versus watching screens and those kinds of things. And that will constantly evolve. That, you know, that it's never going to be static. There's always going to be some emerging tech that allows them to do their job, and they're going to be eager to tell managers and leadership that they want that stuff in their hands. And so I think we're doing really well on the non-intrusive inspection devices. And then this laydown and the resources that are in this bill will expand all of those capabilities both between and at the ports.
Andrea, is your office focused on any sort of development or upskilling as far as the workforce is concerned with technology?
We aren't specifically involved in that. Our program offices do their sort of identify the technology that's required. So as the technology evolves at our ports of entry, then our Office of Field Operations rolls out the training for the employees who'll be using it. From our perspective, we are within my own organization starting to lean into AI. And what we found, and I'm guessing this is true across the board, is that most of our employees have on their personal device, they're using ChatGPT or other AI tools. And so I think this is one of those cases where employees are going to be demanding the technology. They are already tech agile in a lot of ways, and so they're not coming in unfamiliar with technology. They're coming in a lot more able to quickly adapt to new uses and new types of technology because they're doing it themselves in their personal lives. And so it's more of a case of us keeping up with our workforce and making sure we're providing the tools that they're expecting to see when they come into the job.
Yeah, and any concerns just about if there is a lag in terms of how CBP as a enterprise introduces new technology, employees bringing in unauthorized tech as AI evolves, as certain biometric systems evolve that are available even commercially to the private user. How are you addressing that?
I think the workforce is well aware of both the capabilities and some of the limitations that the federal network has. And so it's a well-trained, well understood that you can't bring certain things into the work environment. Things that ride on the network or go on your desktop are highly regulated for the security requirements inside of CBP. And so the challenge will be understanding what tech is out there, what's emerging, what's over the horizon, and the requirements coming from employees. But it'll be a conversation and an adjustment to requirements versus them trying to do workarounds within what they know is pretty much a lockdown network.
All right. Well, and this plays into the retention conversation that we've had as well. But I think CBP has focused a lot on mental health and well-being of the workforce over the last several years, standing up several programs. As you embark on this big recruiting push, can you talk about how you're trying to maintain those projects and perhaps build on them?
I can talk a little bit about that. So over the last, I'd say 5 years or so, CBP has built out what we call our Workforce Care Directorate, or WCD, and we have an incredible suite of services that we provide to our employees. So we start with the base that every federal agency has, the Federal Employees Health Benefits Program, the FEHB, and that provides certain mental health services. But CBP really has gone way beyond that. So we have from our Employee Assistance Program, EAP, which is more expansive than the minimum requirements for a program like that. We already have that built out, but we have employees who volunteer to serve as a collateral duty peer support counselor, and they get training on how to do that, or to serve as a chaplain, or We also now have resilience specialists in the field who are coordinating and making sure employees know about all those services. We have operational psychologists who are there to provide consultation to managers. We have critical incident response teams. So if there is a tragic incident of some sort, we have teams, national teams, who are ready and available to deploy to be on site, because our local peer support folks may be impacted by an event in their local area. So we have national teams who go out to provide support to those folks. So we really have a very robust program. And most importantly, CBP's leadership is all in on supporting the workforce in terms of workforce care. There is no question that that is a priority for our leadership and really a priority for the agency.
All right. Well, I really appreciate all the time from both of you today. Any final thoughts? Anything to leave us with as far as what to watch going forward from CBP on this big recruitment push, this big workforce focus?
No, I appreciate the time as well, and just want to encourage people to go to careers.cbp.gov. We're embarking on a large hiring project, and we need good people that want to give back and serve the country. They'll find a great home at CBP if they try it out.
Andrea, any final thoughts just from your perspective?
First, appreciate the opportunity to talk about what we're doing, and I really am happy that I made the decision to join CBP about 6 years ago. A great career decision for me, because CBP really is a great family to join. And I do encourage folks to look at our careers website and see what's out there. There's a whole lot of information. If you don't know what we do, a lot of people think they know what we do, but they don't. So check out the videos on our website and learn a little bit more about CBP and our mission.
All right. Well, again, I'd like to thank today's guests. Andrea Bright is the Assistant Commissioner of the Office of Human Resources Management for Enterprise Services at CBP, and Ron Vitiello, Senior Advisor at CBP. I'm Justin Doubleday, and you're watching Federal News Network. Let me send you back to the studio for more on Workforce Reimagined.